Cheap surfboards often have a bad reputation, and obviously there's some reasons for that. The first surfboard I ever purchased was about $395 Australian, 250 US dollars in about 2013. Since then, I've bought well over 100 surfboards ranging from $160 through to 4,300 Australian dollars. As a result of that, I've discovered a few things along the way that a lot of stores and shapers won't tell you, which will help you avoid buying the wrong board and put you well on the way to buying the right board for your next purchase. Like I did on a recent trip to the Gold Coast, where I purchased 2 boards from Board Cave, one of which was just 596 Australian dollars, about 395 US dollars, which is more affordable than many second-hand boards you might see in the marketplace, and from some of the lower cost local shapers. Some people might see that price tag and think, well, that's not going to be a good board because it must be cheaply made, and that's what I wanted to test for myself. A friend of mine asked me an opinion for a twin fin, and I went and had a look on the website and I found a beautiful Smith Shapes, which I already own, and it's a great board. But while I was there, I noticed a couple of boards on sale, and one of them was a twin fin, and it was my size, but it was on sale, very cheap. And I thought, maybe I'll give it a try and just see if it's any good. I didn't like the color, but I found one in a better color, and I paid a slightly bit more for the one that was in a better color, and I ended up with this board here from Board Cave. I also did my research on the website, and I sent an email to the manufacturer to ask them more about the board before I purchased. I've got a handy checklist for when I'm about to purchase a board, and one of the questions is, which board in my quiver will this replace? When I don't think I'm going to keep a board forever, I also think about how much could I sell this board for. Before I even purchase a board, I have an idea for what I think the board could be worth if I wanted to sell it, if I don't like the board, or I end up getting something better later on. I went through my board collection here, and one thing I noticed is all of the boards are either made in Australia. I have 2 that are made in the USA, one in Hawaii, one in the mainland. And then I have 2 boards that are not made in Australia or the USA. And that is one that is made in Thailand for a famous Australian brand, which I'm not really excited about that board. And the second one is the board that I've just purchased, which is the cheap board. And let's find out how it stacks up. So what I was able to find out about this board is it was made in China. A lot of them are made in China or Thailand. Apparently, there's very big factories there that are specialists, especially in epoxy construction. And it might be true that they're actually made by mostly machines and then finished off by a manual laborer who perhaps doesn't actually surf, right? That's one of the spiritual arguments that comes up a lot. But how does the actual construction quality? It turns out some of them are actually made pretty well. You would have probably ridden a famous brand that's made in Thailand. I've certainly tried a few. The quality's okay, but that being said, most of my boards are made in Australia or the USA for a reason. When you look at the actual construction, you can see this is an epoxy board, and it has this reasonable quality glues, and it even has a Volan patch in there near the fins at the back. You can see that dark coloration here. It has a little bit of extra strength on the back here where your foot goes. I don't use tail pads, and I've ridden this board half a dozen times, and it has not really indented any more than some of the locally made boards. It certainly feels good in terms of its weight, and we'll get to how it surfs in just a moment. So this is the lower cost board. You can see that little detail there, and you can see the pigment in there and the stringer shining through. Now we have a look at a board that costs 3 times more, and it's got that detail there, that cut lap and the pigment with the stringer shining through. But even have a look at this. This is a locally manufactured high cost board, and it still has little imperfections. So I'm going to say that there's no noticeable difference between the way that these boards have been constructed from the cosmetic perspective. So let's have a look at what you get for different price ranges. For around the $1,500 mark, you can get a locally made, Australian made, known brand here. You could buy one second hand for around $1,000. This is Australian dollars, so 1,500 is about 1,000 US dollars. This is 1,000 Australian dollars, about 700 US dollars. 750. Then for this one, this is actually a Australian shaped, hand-shaped board made locally that costs less than 1,000 Australian dollars, so around 1,000 Australian dollars. That's about 700. So you could buy that brand new, and you could probably have some customization, or you could buy a board like this for about 590 Australian dollars, 399 US dollars, which is made overseas, somewhere like Thailand or China. And this is EPS, all the rest are PU. One of the factors is, the acquisition cost, how much does it cost to buy? The other is, how much could you sell it for secondhand? And how does it actually surf? And do you love it? One thing I noticed about the very first board that I ever purchased was the bottom contour shape of it was rubbish. It was really a difficult board to ride. It was a fun board, and it was 8'6", and it didn't lend itself to nose riding. It didn't lend itself to much at all, actually. It was just a really generic design that was just a mass pop out. So I was curious, what is the bottom shape like on this lower cost board that I've bought that had a pretty cool website that's based in Byron Bay, that talks about local industry and gives you the impression that there's been some development into the shape. And when I ran a straight rule along the bottom of this board, what I noticed was it actually has a fairly modern design. It's got V the whole way through the board, and double concave starting halfway through and ending up into a V double out the fins. What does that actually mean? It means this board has had some thought put into it. It actually reminded me very much of a JS Black Baron that I had, which had an almost identical bottom contour, was also an EPS board. This is the closest that I've got to that feel that I had from the JS Black Baron. I wonder if there's some relationship between those two boards. So what about the sole? We do see people post on social, "Oh, forgive me, Lord, I have sinned. I've purchased a made in China board." But really, they're probably posting it on a phone that was made in China. The Chinese cars are making an infiltration into the market. There's absolutely a case where some of the lower cost production marketplaces are taking advantage of the ability to come to the market. So yes, I can certainly feel for the local shapers, but unless a shaper brings something to the table, like a timely delivery, good quality construction, and actual innovation, then they will have competition from these manufacturers. Look, the majority of the boards in my quiver are handmade or locally made, machine started, hand finished. They have had some design go into it. So it comes down to personal preference. When I pick up this board and carry it down to the beach, no, I don't feel the same sensation or excitement as when I take a locally made, locally tuned board that gets the perfect results out of the waves that I'm looking for. But let's face it, a lot of the surfers, probably myself included, may not be able to pick up the differences between where a board is made or not, depending on their level of surfing, whether it has that extra 1/8 of rocker or not. I think I probably can, because I've been able to bench test so many different boards, and I'm pretty sensitive to small changes, having come from an industry where I was trying different things all the time. I was very excited to surf this board, and as you know, I'm really big on fins. Choosing the right fins can get more out of the board than even the shape of the board. This is supposed to be a keel fish, so I started with some JS keels from Maui Fin Co. These things are very light and they were fine, but I felt they were a little bit drivey and not as maneuverable as I would have wanted. Next up, I tried the Captain fin. These are the Mikey February's. Apparently this is the same template as the CF keel fin. This was fantastic in this board. There's a nice heavy fiberglass thing. It's halfway between a keel and an upright. This was a better fin so far. Next up, I tried my absolute favorite, if you've seen my other fin video, these Saw G10 MMBT fins. They're made out of G10 fiberglass. These are a little whippier. They have a slightly narrower tip, but they've still got a good base. These were the best by far. And if I was going to try another set, then it would be these honeycomb Captain Fin Chris Christensen's, which are set a little further forward. They'll give it a slightly more pivot and plenty of drive. So these are the ones, and I'm a heavy rider, I'm nearly 100 kilograms. So these fins all work well on the board, but I still like the Saw the most. And this board surfed very, very well with these fins. So all in all, I'm actually really happy with my purchase. I think it's great value for money. I would put it down to a very fair price for a fair product. It's not rubbish. It is pretty well made. It's standing up beautifully to the 6 or 7 times I've surfed this board. It's handled a great range of conditions from ankle high to shoulder high, and I would actually put it in my car and drive around with this board and not worry too much about it being damaged or stolen or whatever, because it's just a low stress board to live with and it surfs pretty well. So they've done a good job, and well done to Board Cave for putting boards like this out there, giving people options other than the second-hand market. Hey, if you want to find out what the right fins to ride in your twin fin are, check out this video.